Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. We're continuing our Missing series and we're going for the last base game race of Warhammer 1 now, the Dwarfs, who thankfully enough did get a decent amount of attention in Warhammer 2, mostly in the form of patches. Well, patches and one FLC character, but hey, it's still better than what the Vampire Count's got. The Dwarfs themselves are in a pretty good place at the moment. They don't really have too much missing. I'm not too sure how long this video is going to be as I go through the script, but I will say that they could do with a little bit more, especially as eventually we will likely see the Chaos Dwarves, so it would be nice if we had maybe a Dwarf FLC to go alongside that, because you know, enemy against enemy is always cool, especially a rivalry such as that. It's one of the, well, I can't say it's the most hated thing that the Dwarfs have, because the Dwarfs pretty much hate everything, and most Dwarves don't even like to acknowledge the existence of the Chaos Dwarves, but it would be kind of cool. So with all that being said, let's check out all the missing stuff for the standard Dawi. So keep in mind that the main basis of this video is 8th edition with some supplements, because, well, Creative Assembly like to focus on 8th, they've said it on multiple blogs I believe too. So if we look towards the actual missing generic Lord choices, there's only really one. This is the Demon Slayer, which I think many people have been waiting for because this is a Slayer Lord character, and I think that would be kind of cool because the standard Lord itself is kind of tanky. The Rune Lord, of course, is its like spellcaster variant, you know, inverted commas, and then the Demon Slayer could be a melee damage dealer, just upfront and personal. Plus, who doesn't want a full Slayer army, especially if you're playing with, say, Ungrim, or maybe in the future if Malachi gets added in. It would be really thematic to have Slayer-led armies with Slayer heroes and so on, but we'll get to the hero part in a second. You know, it's just kind of cool. Theme is always important, especially for Warhammer, and Rule of Cool is always really, really important. My only thing I would ask for is weapon option variants when you recruit them, or just a weapon loadout choice, which would be nice, because generally you can have Slayers with either a single hand weapon, additional hand weapons, or a great weapon, and usually that kind of falls to player preference. I just kind of hope that in the future we do get like some weapon options and so on. Mods have been doing it great, but you know, sometimes they get outdated. I honestly don't think there's other generic Lord options. I've gone through a lot of the books and supplements, unless they do something like a Brewmaster if Bugman ever gets added in, but I don't think it's really needed. This is the thing, the Dwarfs were kinda constrained when it came to their army lists and so on, but you never know, they could make something up. They have done in the past, and if it fits with a theme, I mean, why not? In terms of missing generic heroes, we're pretty much in the same boat. All we're really missing is a generic Slayer hero known as the Dragon Slayer. Yeah, that's literally it. The great thing about the Dwarves is that they have heroes to cover everything. They've got melee, they've got range, they've got magic in a sense, and it's just kind of nice to have more of a Berserker type unit too. Again, a Slayer hero would be kind of cool, especially if you're playing as Karak Kadrin and so on. It's just theme. Theme is always nice. You don't have to, but like some people do want to. It wouldn't really have too much to do than, well, depending on what weapon it had, being anti-infantry or anti-large, with the being fast for a dwarf thing, which would be kind of interesting. Now, imagine a full 20 stack, just unbreakable army. You could mix up some different Slayers, maybe even, sorry, I had to go check the books for this, so quick edit, maybe even some, say, for example, Slayer crossbowmen and so on, because they kind of did exist in the lore, well, the Slayer pirates did, which had guns. But you know what I mean, it would just be kind of fun, and that's pretty much why I'm just mentioning these. Right, so now we can move on to missing units, and there are a fair few, very unique ones at that. And just a quick heads up, I don't know why, but it seems to be a lot of Slayers. I promise that I'm not trying to make this Slayer-centric. So first we have the Slayer Doomseekers. These are from the Storm of Chaos, and I mean, look at them, they're pretty cool. This is a unit which is a dedicated anti-infantry unit. Now, the standard Slayers themselves are axe infantry, they're anti-large, and they've got whirling axes and so on, which can kill off infantry quite well. However, these should be a dedicated infantry killer, and they just look cool. This is also a weapon that we're kind of expecting because it also featured in a unit for Khorne. Granted, it's an end times unit, but you know what I mean. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, we don't know just yet. I've always been curious as to how these weapons would actually work, so it would be really cool to see them animated and so on. Plus, again, if you're going to be playing as a Slayer build or want a Slayer army just for Ungrim, then these would kind of fit in well. They'd have the usual stuff, fast for a dwarf, whirling axes for sure, death blow, and likely anti-infantry, obviously being unbreakable too, so, you know, they should be able to do a decent amount of damage. Next we have the Goblin Hero, a model which I keep saying I'm going to paint and then I never do. I should really do this. Anyways, the Goblin Hero itself is a special type of ranged weapon. It's kind of like, say for example, a bolt thrower, but rather than bolts it throws axes, and it does a lot of damage at that. It's a rather impressive machinery. It's part of Malachi Malkinson, which we'll be talking about later on in this video. It's kind of like hurling, say, goblin fanatics in one direction, but probably not as damaging. I think it could kill D3 per rank, which was pretty decent in all honesty. On the tabletop it had decent range, I believe it was 48 inches or so, and it was able to take out 2 from an enemy's armor save, which is very strong, even though its strength was only around 4, though I think it's something cool. It's definitely something unique, and, well, yeah, it's another type of bolt thrower in a sense, but this is kind of more powerful. The bolt thrower would be more specialized for taking out anti-large stuff, and then this would be more focused on dealing damage against enemies with big numbers, you know, Skaven and so on. Again, this is just something which is rule of cool, and as always, it's kind of important. Plus, it's the thing about Storm of Chaos, introducing a lot of really cool stuff, which sadly didn't really make it into further editions. I don't know why. It's a weird thing with Games Workshop. Next would be the Slayer Pirates, which, yeah, I know, it's a lot of Slayers, but hey, this army was kind of centered around that in the Storm of Chaos. Anyways, from what you're getting here is Slayers, but with some range weaponry too. Nothing too great, it's obviously pistols and so on, but they're able to fire and just keep firing constantly. Pistol units might not be the absolute best, but we still get them, like the Ogres are getting one now too. Mind you, those are more like shotguns, but hey. And it would just be kind of nice to have some small range units with the Slayers, because this kind of works. Hey, I don't know exactly how these would work in game. I don't know how viable they would be. Probably not as much, but it's kind of like a skirmishing unit too, because you could obviously use them in melee combat, and then you'd be supported by the Goblin Hero, so it could work quite well. Plus, I'd say with that and everything else that we discussed that's Slayer themed, we've pretty much got a full Slayer roster, which would be the dream. But I think we're done talking about Slayers for now. Let's talk about the Thunderbarge. So this was introduced a long time back, and it had rules in the 8th edition army book. Essentially what you had to do was build it yourself, because that was back in the day when Games Workshop used to release rules and details, stat lines and so on for stuff that just never had miniatures. Believe me, it happened a lot. But the Thunderbarge was made by a lot of people, and it was very much loved because, well, it was just kind of overpowered. And, well, we've been wanting it here for Total War for a while, especially with modders being able to recreate it and so on. It would be kind of cool to see it done officially and see what Creative Assembly could do with it. Plus, something like this would definitely be a flagship unit because, I mean, it's massive, so yeah. It's one of those things that definitely would make people buy a DLC, and yeah, I mean, the Dwarfs could do with a little bit more flavor. I think mechanic-wise, they're decent enough. Maybe something else could be done in the future, but something like this is definitely something that people would be interested in. I know I would love to see a Thunderbarge being done and interpreted that way, especially as then it would bring some implications to maybe legendary heroes and so on, which we'll discuss later. Rune Golems are something that people have been wanting for a long time now, and I believe they were mentioned in some really obscure place in the lore. I know that in the Warhammer 8th edition rulebook, there was something that kind of looks like them in an illustration, but it was kind of really far away, and we don't know exactly what that was or what Games Workshop were actually intending with that. But I know that the reason why people want them is because they want a large, monstrous unit that can be quite tanky for the Dwarfs, because right now, yeah, you know, the moment the artillery runs out or it's taken out, it can be a bit weird for them, and there is a lot of stuff coming into effect with anti-armor and so on, so they want something that can be tanky. It's understandable, and I am completely with that too. I don't know exactly how this could work, maybe as a singular unit, but hey, we're gonna have to wait and see. Maybe Games Workshop have been listening to people's cries, because obviously it's not just CA when it comes to completely new things, but we're gonna have to wait. One thing I would personally love to see are dwarf miners with steam drills. This was something which was kind of attached to the whole miners in 8th edition, and it would work nice as a weapons team. Plus it could tie nicely with that of the Skaven, because, you know, they've got their own grinders too. I would personally make them do a lot of damage against gates, and maybe be wall breakers too, just for something that you want to just break into a wall quickly. They'd still be able to do some damage, maybe with an AoE area of effect, kind of like the actual warp grinders too. But I think a weapons team would just be kind of nice for the dwarfs. It's just, they kind of fit with the theme, but we haven't really seen anything like that. Mind you, the Dwarfs never really got too much stuff when it came to army books. It was kind of weird. This is coming from someone who played Dwarfs from 6th edition onwards. I have a decent army, actually. I've been repainting a bunch of them. And yeah, it's just one of those things that you start to notice later down the line, like, oh yeah, these guys went missing quite a bit. And lastly, because they're really not missing much, it would be kind of cool to see them get Iron Drakes with the Drake Fire pistols. This would kind of work in a very good way if we end up getting the Slayer Pirates too. The Slayer Pirates would be the earlier version that you'd get, you know, pistols, no armor and so on, and then you'd have the Drake Fire pistols with, well, you know, heavy armor. They're basically Iron Drakes. It would just be kind of nice and have a different variant. Plus, unit champions do end up becoming their own units too, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Now, I myself don't favor short-range weapons, but it would be nice just to have some options. This is not just tabletop, but also Total War. On the tabletop, if you had short range, you kind of suffered as a dwarf, because you wanted to go and corner camp. Funny enough, that was the actual tactic. It was pretty much corner camping. Unless you had that really brutal build where you had Vanguard and so on, but let's not talk about tabletop stuff. So I did forget about a mount option, the Shieldbearers, and I don't know how, because they were pretty iconic on the tabletop. Like, with some items and so on, you could get a 1-up armor save, extra attacks, extra wounds. It was just fantastic, and it's just something that is really embedded into dwarf lore. It's a shame that we haven't had this yet. Obviously, the mod's been very, very good, but as we move on to Warhammer 3, you never know if that mod will be transferable or not. And, you know, mount options for dwarves would be nice. Yeah, they don't really need it. It's not going to make them any faster, trust me. But it's just kind of cool, and it's very unique. You have to give it that. It is incredibly unique. So now we can talk about some missing legendary characters, and we're going to talk about the ones in the 8th edition army book first, because obviously that makes the most sense. There's only a few missing from that book, and some of them could be a legendary lord or a legendary hero. Let's start off with Joseph Bugman, because he's a personal favorite of mine. This is the master brewer. His lore is kind of sad, because he was really living his best life, and then some greenskins decided to burn down his brewery, which, you know, kind of makes you want to kill them all. And he's practically just been living all the rest of his life hunting down greenskins. He won't be happy until they're basically exterminated from the planet. For this, I think that this character would be an interesting horde. Now, yes, I know a lot of people don't like horde factions, and I understand that, but it kind of fits with his lore. He's constantly traveling, he's got no hold, and if done right, if they do a proper horde rework and just make it really, really interesting, especially for a dwarf, which would be very, very different, this could be done very, very well. Obviously, I don't know, it could work really badly too, as hordes haven't really been in the great place since ever. Yeah. But I'm still holding out hope, as, well, it fits with his lore, as I've said before, and I don't know, Creative Assembly could do something really, really special. Plus, imagine not having to focus on, say, Grudges and so on, but just hunting down greenskins, or going up to the realms of chaos and moving up with a horde faction would be kind of cool, paving the way there for your allies. Like, the theme is there. I just don't know how this could be done. This is the only way I can see it, and if you guys have an idea on how it could be done, let me know in the comments below, but I really, really think that he would be a great horde. Grimberluxen is next. He is pretty cool because he's a master engineer and he's a dwarf with a shotgun. I mean, what's not to love? The character itself is just a master engineer in the most basic way of explaining, so you'll be buffing up artillery, range units and so on, but the shotgun was quite powerful. He also had a really strong cog axe, which I remember took out Sigvald in a duel once when I was playing him on the tabletop. It could be really interesting as a legendary hero, because we're still missing a lot of legendary heroes, and the dwarves kind of could do with one. Berluxen might be a really cool one, because like he's got a cool model, you can see it on screen right now, and yeah, I mean, cool factor. It's a big thing. Though if they want to introduce another master engineer, well, he's a shamed engineer, they could introduce Malika McCason, which, you know, he's a Slayer engineer, he's kind of crazy. A few of the units that were mentioned in this video are actually linked to him for the Storm of Chaos supplement, so it kind of works as a DLC. I could see him as a legendary hero, but I could also see him as a legendary lord. He could also kind of be a horde too. I don't think he has a hold anymore, does he? My memory's kind of hazy, but he could be a lord, and then obviously Grim could be the hero, and this could introduce all the Slayer characters, which then could go to Ungrim. It's just something I think that could work out quite well. I know he's a popular character, a lot of people quite like him, which is interestingly enough because the Slayer list wasn't too good in 6th, if I recall, but hey, you know, these types of things always breed fans. Crag the Grim could be an interesting legendary hero. He's a Master Rune Lord, and yes, I know it's not very special because we already have some Rune Lords and so on, but the reason why he's a respected dwarf is because he's incredibly old. If I remember correctly, his position in lore is that he is the oldest living dwarf. Grimberluxen doesn't really count here as his thing was always kind of debated, and that he is trying to find a worthy successor, but no other dwarf has been able to actually prove himself. He's an old character which was introduced in a White Dwarf issue way back in the day, and then didn't get any mentions until the end times, I believe. But it would always be kind of cool to have a throwback to those old characters because, you know, that's always cool. Believe me, when it comes to these types of things, the old guard, the people who used to play the tabletop and so on, they really appreciate that type of stuff in game. And lastly, we'll talk about King Alric of Karakern, because Karakern gives me PTSD with this game. Like, seriously, anytime in Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2, they would always declare war on me for some reason. Like, even if I was on the other side of the world. He is the King of Karakern, as I said, and he's a character who's been in the lore for a decent amount of time. He was actually playable in 6th edition too. Very well-loved character who was still showing up in the end times and so on, and was in the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay series too. The reason why this character is so well-liked is because he was well-known for riding on Shieldbearers, so if he ever gets implemented, then they could use the rigging for the Shieldbearers itself and, you know, give us the mount too? No? Maybe? He's a cool character. What we do know is he doesn't use a lot of the modern tech. He's more used to using iron breakers and dwarf crossbows, which kind of goes more with, obviously, Forex stuff. So it might be too familiar, so maybe just as a FLC Lord it would be great. I'm just saying this as any hope to getting a Shieldbearer. Literally, that's my objective here. Now, before we end this video, there's one thing that we can talk about. That's mainly the fact that, look, I really don't think that we'll ever get a dedicated faction to Norse dwarfs because there's not really that much territory for them. However, it would be really cool, considering that we know that their territory is in the Warhammer 3 map, that we could have a DLC featuring the dwarfs and that faction specifically having unique units only for that faction. I'm talking a Norse dwarf sub-faction, minor faction type of thing. I think it's about time that they started experimenting with more different types of DLCs, so technically it would be like its own minor race pack. It would introduce one legendary lord, because I really doubt that we'd get more than one character for the Norse dwarfs, but it would also implement some Norse dwarf units. If they go back further enough in the books, there is some stuff there, I believe, in 3rd edition, 4th edition, but it would be kind of cool as they would still have access to the dwarf stuff and so on, maybe not being able to have access to, say, the more recent technological stuff and so on, but this would provide a complete different faction within a faction. Does that make sense? It's kind of like when I say that Morathi should have access to Slaaneshi units, more like the 6th edition army list that she had access to way back in the day. It would be completely different, it would be very stylized. I think that it would provide for some pretty interesting gameplay. Plus, that would give reason for Games Workshop to make some proper lore for the Norse dwarfs, which I've always been really curious about. Then I think a lot of people would be happy. It would give you some different playstyle. It's just kind of cool. And then maybe Creative Assembly would be kind of interested to test the waters with that, with potential for more hybrid factions. I'll tell you, I've been asking for ages. I've been suggesting it for ages and so on. It's a shame that we haven't seen one yet, especially with Morathi. Maybe Morathi will get a change when it comes to Warhammer 3 with a potential Dark Elf rework, because they will need some changes, especially the slavery mechanic. I mean, one can dream, right? But it would just be cool. Like I said, I don't see them becoming their own dedicated faction and so on, so this would probably be the best way. If you guys think of a different way, let me know, but keep in mind that a DLC pack is what, like £7 or so, whereas a faction pack is what, 25? It makes more sense to just introduce it as a DLC pack as a sub-faction, and that way they only have to make a few units, rather than Creative Assembly working on a complete faction with only one legendary lord, because there's no other dwarven holds around that area, I believe. Most of them that were in what is now Norska have all been long since destroyed because, you know, Norskans and chaos and stuff. I think that's pretty much it when it comes to the dwarfs. I really don't think that there's other stuff that they really need. Obviously, you guys might have some other suggestions, but I've gone through the army books, I've gone through some supplements, and I think this just kind of finishes them all up. They've got one of the best tech trees in the whole game. They've had some quality of life changes over 2 big updates in Warhammer 2. I don't think that they need anything else. Maybe a new mechanic would be nice. But other than that, I think that they're pretty well rounded and they play very well. Sure, it's not for everyone. A lot of people find the dwarves boring because they're slow, they don't really move much. But yeah, I like the dwarves. I've always liked them from the tabletop. I thought they were fun to play. It's just very different playstyles. Keep in mind that we've been seeing a lot of different races and factions and a lot of very different. And the dwarves play very lore friendly. Very, very lore friendly. But with all that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below and we can start a bit of a discussion. I'm curious to see what you guys think about the dwarves. I know, by the way, I've not been replying to comments lately. I've said it in yesterday's video. It's just I'm getting ready for surgery and so on. So I'm working on videos quickly. But I promise you that I am reading your comments. And once I'm a bit more calm, I'll be able to go through the videos and start replying. I do apologize. I know it doesn't sound great from me, but it's just been weird lately. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel has been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.